Hey there, everyone. It's Camber here with the Yo Pro No. I am sitting here today with Danielle Silverman, 30-year-old licensed clinical social worker and owner of her own practice, which we'll hear all about today. She's coming to us today from Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and we are so excited to have you here today. Thanks so much, Danielle.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Camber.
So, as is tradition, I always like to share how each interview was connected to me in this network. And so, Danielle and I, we do go way back, are not too way back, but when I moved to Greenville, her mom actually kind of adopted me and kind of became my Greenville mom because my own mom was back home in Baltimore, about 10 hours away. And so for a long time, Danielle was living out of Greenville. And so her mom, Bonnie, just said, "You have to meet my daughter. I think you guys will really hit it off." And several years later, we finally met and we did hit it off. And so I'm so glad that you can be here today and sharing your story, because it's just always great to have friends and basically family at this point on the show. So thanks again. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm glad that you met through your mom.
Yes, me too. She is a good connector.
So let's get started with a brief background on yourself. So I already mentioned, where you're from, but tell us a little bit of what your background looks like and how you got to where you are today. And then we'll dive into those details in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I have my master's in social work. I got that at Winthrop University. And so I knew I always wanted to be in a helping profession, but I didn't know what that looked like. And my mom is a social worker. So I knew a lot about it. And the thing that I love the most is that you can do so much with it. It's not just, you choose one career and then you're in the same job forever, but it's really versatile. So I knew that would probably be a good fit for me. So once I went through graduate school, I started working in medical social work. So I was doing a lot of case management and supporting patients and families who were struggling with life-limiting illnesses. So it varied, but it was primarily grief and loss and end-of-life care. So that was a really wonderful experience, but very taxing emotionally. And so I kind of rethought, what do I want to do next? So then I moved into a counseling role where I was just providing individual or family therapy. And then that led me to what I'm doing now, which is I have a private practice called Peace Lily Counseling Services. So I work with young adults who are struggling with life transition. So that could look like moving to a new city, starting college, trying to figure out kind of what their next step is. So that often comes with anxiety, depression, just kind of what do I want to do with my life.
Yeah. Well, thank you that was a really great overview of kind of what brought you here today. And I know that, you moved about a year ago to Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And so you started your practice once you moved, correct?
Yeah. So my husband and I moved here for his job, and I did not want to work in the setting that I was working in previously. So I was talking to several people who had a private practice or were interested in that. So I kind of had a little start of a support to figure that out. And so, I took the leap when we moved. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, congrats. And
Thank you.
tell us a little bit about what that looked like from in the last year. Obviously, the pandemic, you've pretty much you opened your business, in a pandemic. So
Good.
what does that look like? What have you learned from that? And what does your client look like? What does your typical client look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was, looking back, it was very challenging to do it, but also helpful because I wanted to work remotely mainly, specifically while we were moving. So I'm licensed in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Pennsylvania. And so the rule is with telemental health, you have to be licensed where the client is physically located. It doesn't matter as much where the therapist is.
Okay.
So because of that, I was able to continue to keep my North Carolina license and see clients.
Oh, that's great.
So I was like, well, I can't do that in person. I want to have it virtual. And because of the pandemic, everyone was getting used to that.
Mhm.
So in that regard, it was like very helpful, that it wasn't this like foreign thing that people were trying to figure out how to navigate, but it was becoming the norm.
That's amazing. I mean, what good timing. So you actually don't have a physical location.
Yeah, correct. I don't have a physical location. I think down the road, I will. When people ask, I've been saying in 2022, I'm going to reassess.
Right. No, absolutely. And
Mhm,
kind of going back to my question about what do your clients look like? Are they, and I know you said they're young adults, are
mhm,
how many clients do you typically see? And because you're remote, are you able to see more? What does that look like?
yeah. So my typical client is, yeah, a young adult. So like 20s, really just in their 20s. I have some people who are older than that as well, but I see 18 and older. I don't see children. So typical client is someone who is in graduate school or finishing up college and just trying to figure out what is their next step and feeling kind of stuck.
Mhm.
And just, well, there's lots of uncertainty in the world right now, but just with life transitions, that can bring a lot of, I'm not really sure what route I want to go.
Mhm.
So what I do is just help them figure that out in a more of a guiding them to, maybe it's addressing coping skills, if they're very anxious about their next transition, helping to get that under control first,
Mhm.
and then getting clarity about what it is that they want to do and how that's going to look for them.
It's a lot like a career coach in a way. It's
Yeah,
because
it
you
can be, definitely.
probably coincides with some career coach methods, I would imagine. Obviously,
Hmm.
a little bit deeper, but talking about transitions and the kind of work that you're helping them towards, I don't know, I see some kind of synergy there.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit more about this route and this path to social work so that people who are listening or watching who might be interested, or maybe they don't even know that they're interested, what
Hmm.
does that path look like? You kind of mentioned already you have your master's, but
Hmm.
what does it look like and what advice would you give to somebody who's interested?
Yeah. So um, the route I would say is, you have to have your bachelor's, and it doesn't need to be in social work. My bachelor's is in psychology, and I'm, to my understanding, I'm pretty sure you can have a bachelor's in anything. To go on to get your master's in social work, you might have to take some prerequisites. Um, so the program I did was a 2-year program. If you have your bachelor's in social work, there are programs you could do advanced standing. So it's, I don't remember exact the time, but it's, I think, like 16 months. It's like very quick.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so the program I did was empowerment based.
Mhm.
So it was very focused on just empowering the clients' families that we're working with. But that can also look like being in an administrative role or doing more organizational work.
Mhm.
So with social work, there are terms we use like micro, meso, and macro. So if you think about micro as like working on an individual level with clients, patients, families, or groups, and then macro is working on an organizational level. So like working for a large organization and helping with, yeah, more of an administrative role.
Mhm. Great. Thank
Yeah.
you for helping with that. I have some friends who have done masters of social work programs, but it's even something that I need a little bit of a refresher on. So for
Hmm.
don't have any idea, I think it's very helpful. Um,
Yeah.
take many paths, like you said. It's like not just a linear field.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that's important for anyone to know. So what advice would you give to somebody who is looking into getting in the industry? Would you tell them a specific piece of advice or just a broad general overview?
Yeah, I would say to keep an open mind. You may go into graduate school or even a new job thinking this is what you want to do, but keep an open mind that that can change and evolve, and that's okay. And the skills that you learn getting your master's in social work are very transferable. So
Mhm.
they can be used in positions that aren't even um, social work specific.
Right.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So this is one of my favorite questions, but not a lot of people love answering it all the time. It's about hardships. What has
Mhm.
been a really big hardship for you since you started your young professional career, and what have you learned from that?
Yeah. So which I think is somewhat common going into social work school, I was very excited. I wanted to help people, change the world. And once I graduated, I realized um, it's very taxing, the work that we do. So I got burnt out pretty quickly, which sometimes happens in our field, just being in a helping profession. So that was very difficult for me going from something like very excited to start this job to getting burnt out within the first year or two.
Mhm.
And I'm still early in my career. So that was a little bit frightening. And I questioned, do I want to even stay in social work? Maybe I want to go a different route.
Mhm.
Um, so that was very, very difficult for me, but it helped me understand the pieces that I like about social work and the things that I don't like
Mhm.
and how I can make it work for me.
Great. And I mean, particularly because you are helping people with, their mental health, you have to make sure your mental health is in check.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Particularly, when you're talking about getting burned out, and that's so common these days with people in their 20s. And
Hmm.
so that, I can imagine, is very, very taxing.
Hmm.
Talking to others about it, but also when you're maybe struggling with your own kind of balance as well. That's really tough. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing. I know that's not easy to talk about, but on a more positive note, what drives you to keep going every day with work and, being an owner of a business? I mean, what drives
Hmm.
you? What motivates you?
Yeah. So support from my friends and family, absolutely. And sometimes just thinking back about where I was and like where I've come from is very motivating, and knowing that like I've been in not so great situations and that this is something I've created for myself
Mhm.
and I can make it what I want,
Yep.
which is very empowering.
Yeah. I mean, you already talked about empowerment today a
Yeah.
little. Empower yourself with this business. So
Hmm.
congratulations to everything that you've done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. So, just to wrap things up, because I'm mindful of time, any other pieces of advice that you would like to share? Or is there anything that you feel like we didn't cover today that you want to mention before I ask my final question?
Yeah. I think we really covered a lot. It's hard to put it into 15, 20 minutes, but if people have questions, they're welcome to reach out to me if they want to know more about what I do.
We'll make sure we link all of your channels across our platforms. People they will know where to find you. But to wrap things up, Danielle, for today, what tell us about your life outside of the office. We talked a lot about work today, but it's very important in a young professional's life to talk about the fun things too outside of the office.
Hmm.
What do you like to do in your free time that is not work related?
Yeah. So that has evolved a little bit because of the pandemic, but spending time with my husband and our dog. We have a dog named Woodson, and he's a black lab husky mix. So
Oh,
he's so fun, really fluffy.
I bet.
So spending time with him, and we like to go. There's some hiking trails close to us, so we like to be outdoors. And yeah, I really like to spend time with friends and family. I'm more of a individual, so I like to just do like one-on-one hangouts versus large groups.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, just trying to find our network here, and love a good binge watch as well on Netflix.
What you watching right now?
Yeah. Right now I'm watching Virgin River,
Oh yeah, okay. I've
which
seen
is
previews of that. It looks pretty.
yeah, it's okay. Yeah. I'm gonna keep going, but
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Seasons to binge, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
Danielle, thank you so much for your time today. It has been great having you and the path of social work on the show, and I'm super excited for our audience to listen.
Yeah, thanks so much, Camber.